Visual है like sir.
हाँ. Okay, sir. Okay,
Sir.
now it's okay.
Sir. It is MPSE 007, second year political science, MPSE 007, social movements and politics in India. And today, in the previous class, we had concluded from Unit 1 to Unit 5. Today it is Unit 6. Unit 6 is about state, market, and social movements. It is regarding the linkage of market with state, the role of market, the role of state in the present day globalization process, and the activities of social movements in the new economic order in India, particularly in India. You know, social groups like agrarian classes refers to the peasants sections of the society. The peasant section of the society, peasant means the Krusaka Samaj, peasant sections of the society. The another class is working women class, Dalitas, OBCs, environmental and ecological protection groups. All these look for collective action. Their goal is to achieve a collective action with the changes in society and with the changes in economy in India. During the process of globalization, changing status of the state and the changing status of the market, these social groups woke up. As such, scholars, academicians studied the linkage of social movement, with the changing nature and role, with the changing nature and role of state and also of market. Role of state also in pre-independent India and post-independent India. Pre and post-independent India, and particularly before 1991 and after 1991. 1991 ମସିହା କୁ କାହିଁକି ଏତେ ଗୁରୁତ୍ୱ ଦିଆଯାଉଛି? Only because on that year India accepted, adopted and implemented the globalization process in India. Prior to that, prior to 1991, there was state controlled economy inside the country, and state had to play a dominant role in managing the economic order of the state. And there was a mixed economy system, mixed economy policy adopted by the new government after India achieved independence in the year 1947. The foundation of economic policy in India was prepared by the first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. And in the year 1991, it was the Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao. P.V. Narasimha Rao, who adopted the process of globalization, and there was the change of the role of market, and also there was the change of the role of state in the new economic order. That was the process of globalization. The developmental model, Unit 6, state, market, and social movements. Please stop your audio. Anybody, you have opened it. Please stop your audio.
Bimbadar Bera, please mute your audio. Bhagyalakshmi, stop presenting. Why are you presenting? Bhagyalakshmi Gowda. Presenting button पे click करो नहीं, stop presenting करो और leave the meeting. Let me remove.
Unit 6, state, market.
Bhagyalakshmi बाहर कर दो. अच्छा तंग बाहर कर दिली. आउथर आपको आउथर present button click करे पड़े होते.
मते
हाँ क्या समझ देखा जीवनी. Is it visible to all of you? अच्छा. मझे पिला आसी से प्रेजेंट बटन रे क्लिक कर दउछन तो सेतले आपन असुविधा होउजी हो.
आ गया.
हां
visible है लाइक सर प्रेजेंटेशन.
नहीं नहीं प्रेजेंट ना बटन है क्लिक आपन प्रेजेंट ना रे पर क्लिक करना दी. प्रेजेंट ना क्लिक करके आउथर करियो.
आ गया.
ये तळे जो प्रेजेंट ना बटन क्लिक करियो.
लाइक
सर
सर
हबो एबे हां आसु आसु आपण खोलंदु. हां ओके
असला
सर
सर.
आसला. पिला माने जी हां सर सर ठीक है देखाला. पिला माने जी कथा न सुनिमो ताको मीटिंग रो आउट कर देबी. दया करी कि टिके अन्यमान डिस्टर्ब करंतुनी. प्रेजेंट ना बटन के क्लिक करिवोनी आ वीडियो ऑडियो के ऑन करिवोनी नहले मो मीटिंग रो आउट कर देबी. प्लीज क्या अन्यमान डिस्टर्ब हो कहीं. ओके ओके सर यू कैन कंटिन्यू.
Sir, the development, the process of development is fundamentally necessary for a state. Development is fundamentally necessary for a state. The developmental model in the early phases of post-independent India, two phases. The phase from 1947 to 1990, 1947 मसीह 1990 मसीहा होची one phase, the first phase, the early phase, and after 1990, particularly from 1991, 1991 मसीहा ठारू onwards, that is the latter phase or the second phase. The developmental model in the early phases of post-independent India witnessed dominant role of the state. The developmental process was managed by the state exclusively. The development was carried on, administered, and managed by the state exclusively. At that time, the market was dependent on a state for its existence. The market was controlled by the state at that time for its existence, for its sustenance, for its growth through license Raj, license system. In the macroeconomy, state gave preference to the industry over the agriculture or the rural sector. से समय 1947 मसीहा ठारू 1990 मसीहा पर्यंत राष्ट्रर जो विकास धारा भारत जो विकास धारा परिचालित होता राष्ट्र द्वारा संपूर्ण रूप से प्रशासनिक भाव परिचालित होता एवं राष्ट्र एग्रीकल्चर अपेक्षा शिल्पायन को मात्राधिक गुरुत्व देता. The state introduced several measures which affected different classes, groups. These groups participated in the collective actions afterwards. These social groups. Who are these groups? Agrarian classes, working classes, women classes, Dalitas, OBCs, environmental or ecological groups. These are the social groups which participated in the collective actions. Movement is otherwise known as collective action. Here, collective action is referred to movement. What type of movement? Social movement. Afterwards, then these groups discourse on the Indian state in the post-independent period. The trajectory of the state in India during post-independent period can be divided into two phases. We could see the phase from 1947 to 90, another is 1991 till onwards. The Nehru period, first phase, the Nehru period, and second phase, the P.V. Narasimha Rao period. Two perspectives have been followed to analyze the Indian state. At that time, there were two perspectives to analyze the Indian state. Indian state means the nature of Indian state, the autonomy of Indian state, the efficacy of Indian state. The post 1990 phase was the era of liberalization from 1990s. Liberalization. You know, the features of globalization are liberalization, privatization, market-based economy system, these investment, these are the features of globalization. Globalization is nothing but a worldwide economic order, worldwide economic system managed by, controlled by WTO, World Trade Organization, a subsidiary economic body of UNO, मिलित जातिसंघर गोटे अर्थनैतिक संस्था, आनुषंगिक अर्थनैतिक संस्था जार नाम होची WTO, वर्ल्ड ट्रेड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. तार कार्य हला विश्वव्यापी सृष्टि करा जाइथिबा अर्थनैतिक व्यवस्था को परिचालन करवा. There was a decline in the state authority. 1991 मसीह ग्लोबलाइजेशन बा जगतीकरण को ग्रहण करनवा परे राष्ट्र जो कर्तृत्व रहिला स्टेट अथॉरिटी डिक्लाइन. Following the introduction of a structural adjustment program, globalization is referred to structural adjustment program. Structural adjustment program is otherwise known as globalization, introduced by the Narasimha Rao government in 1991. This phase is marked by the parallel rise of the market force. As a result of globalization in India and also throughout the world, there was the rise of market force. decline of state authority, rise of market force, and rise of civil society organizations. It was the nature of globalization. Nature of globalization. Decline of state authority and the rise of market force and the rise of civil society organizations. The nature, autonomy, and efficacy of Indian state can be analyzed from a Marxian and a non-Marxian perspectives. दुईटी दृष्टिकोणरू भारतीय राष्ट्र द्वारा परिचालित अर्थनैतिक व्यवस्थार नेचर ऑटोनॉमी एंड एफिकेसी को आमे विचार करि परिबा अध्ययन करते The non-Marxian perspective can be subdivided into development or modernization or systematic and neoliberal perspectives. The emphasis of the Marxists is to understand its class character. You know, Marxism, the core of Marxism is that the society is divided into two antagonistic classes. Two antagonistic classes on the basis of economy, on the basis of ownership. Those who have the ownership of means of production and distribution are known as bourgeois or haves, मालिक श्रेणी, धनिक श्रेणी, पुंजीपति श्रेणी बा थिलावाला ये सब होची मार्क्स द्वारा परिकल्पित समाजर एक क्लास बा गोष्ठी आ गोटे गोष्ठी होचंती प्रोलेटारिएट्स the laborer class, the class who have no ownership, so that Marx refer them as सर्वहरा class, a duty class. आर्थिक दृष्टिकोण आम समाज दुई भाग विभक्त, गोटे हूँ धनिक बा पुंजीपति श्रेणी आ गोटे हूँ श्रमिक श्रेणी बा सर्वहरा श्रेणी। ए दृष्टि राष्ट्र को मार्क्स सदाबले अध्ययन करती एवं ग्लोबलाइजेशन, बिफोर ग्लोबलाइजेशन, पोस्ट ग्लोबलाइजेशन, प्री ग्लोबलाइजेशन, ए दुईटी जाक अवस्था को आम मार्क्स दृष्टिकोण अध्ययन करिपरिबा। The emphasis of the Marxist is to understand its class character. The neoliberals find the state insufficient. The bureaucratic rule, राष्ट्रटा कौन अयोग्य। Bureaucratic rule, bureaucratic means अमलातांत्रिक व्यवस्था रे राष्ट्र शासित होउछ, and detrimental to the growth and progress in the pre-1990. भारत रे जो मिश्रित अर्थनैतिक व्यवस्था प्रचलित होता स्वाधीनता परवर्ती अवस्था रे, अर्थात फास्ट फेज रे, अर्ली फेज रे 1947-1990 पर्यंत ए फेज रे राष्ट्र विकासर धारा को त्वरान्वित करि पारि नथिला कारण सुपरिचालनार अभाव थिला, जाको इनएफिशिएंट। एवं से समय रे ब्यूरोक्रेट माने थिले प्रकृत रूलर एंड वास्तव विकास, जाको इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ, पर कैपिटा इनकम, नेशनल इनकम and the rise of standard of living of people is called the growth, and also progress was not as it was expected by the state. By the 1980s, the financial problems, mainly the balance of payment had become very acute in India. राष्ट्र पाखरे राष्ट्र राजकोषरे आदौ अर्थ नथिला बा राष्ट्र गरीब होई चलीथिला विकास रो धारा विकसित प्रक्रिया जेते आवश्यक थिला ताहा हेई परिनथिला बरं राष्ट्र गरीबरू अधिक गरीब The solution to this was to be found in the borrowing from the international donor agencies. से समय रे अर्ली फेज रे राष्ट्र निजर विकास को परिचालना करिया पई आंतर्जातिक डोनर बा अर्थ लगाण संस्था पाखरे धार आनिबाकू पाखरु धार आनिबाकू बाध्य होतला से संस्था गुड़िकर नाम होची IMF International Monetary Fund, World Bank and like others. These donor agencies, these financial agencies could not lend only if their conditions were accepted. सीए गोटे राष्ट्र बा भारत चाहिए से माने ताको अर्थ प्रदान करिवे ए व्यवस्था नथिला रादर सेमानंकर कंडीशंस जदि फुलफिल हो नथिला यू नो द कैपिटल ऑफ IMF एंड वर्ल्ड बैंक एवं अंतर्जातिक मुद्रा पांठी भली विश्वस्तरीय आर्थिक अनुष्ठान मूल पुंजी विकसित राष्ट्र माने ही प्रदान करथिले अर्थात विकसित राष्ट्र हाथ गणती अल्प केतोटी विकसित राष्ट्र अमेरिका ब्रिटेन फ्रांस जर्मन जापान एई भली केते गुडिये विकसित राष्ट्रंक द्वारा प्रदान करा जायथिबा मूल पुंजी रे विश्व बैंक एवं आंतर्जातिक मुद्रा पांठी प्रचलित थिला परिचालित होउथला सेमानंकर इच्छा को पूर्ण करिया पई तांको द्वारा सेमानंकर स्वार्थ को पूर्ण करिया पई जो कटकणा आवश्यक से कटकणा को ग्रहण कले जाई भारत को ऋण प्रदान करा जाउथला से समय को समय अर्ली फेज रे 1947 1990 मसिया पर्यंत As a result of this conditionality, Government of India had to introduce the structural adjustment program. केवल विश्व बैंक रो चाप IMF रो चाप जोगु भारत बाध्य ही थिला structural adjustment program means globalization to adopt to introduce globalization, the process of globalization means liberalization, privatization. Structural adjustment program refers to liberalization, refers to privatization, refers to globalization. Then changing status of the market after 1990, particularly from the year 1991, the status of the market changed. Status of the market changed because role of market arose, role of state declined. राष्ट्र कर्तृत्व तळकू गला कमीगला एवं स्टेटस पोजीशन रोल ऑफ मार्केट इंक्रीज डेवलपमेंट तो हब डेवलपमेंट तो आवश्यक राष्ट्र डेवलपमेंट कहा द्वारा परिचालित हब राष्ट्र द्वारा हब कि मार्केट द्वारा हब दैट वाज द क्वेश्चन अर्ली फेज रे राष्ट्र द्वारा होतला 1991 onwards it was carried on by the market and from 1991 the structural reforms were कौन संस्कार करागला 1991 मसीहा रे ग्लोबलाइजेशन को ग्रहण करने पर भारत रे की आर्थिक परिवर्तन हला आर्थिक व्यवस्थार परिवर्तन हला इकोनॉमिक ऑर्डर इकोनॉमिक स्टेटस रो कौन परिवर्तन हला इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी रो कौन परिवर्तन हला द स्ट्रक्चरल रिफॉर्म्स वर रिमूवल ऑफ टैरिफ एंड नॉन टैरिफ बैरियर्स विदिन एंड आउटसाइड द कंट्री राष्ट्रर भौगोलिक सीमा भितरे सीमित होइथिबा राष्ट्रीय अर्थनैतिक कटकणा को संपूर्ण भाव में उठे दिया गला बैरियर्स रिमूवल ऑफ टैरिफ एंड नॉन टैरिफ बैरियर्स विदिन एंड आउटसाइड द कंट्री आउ कोन परिवर्तन हला क्रिएशन ऑफ द फ्री इकोनॉमिक और ट्रेड जोन फ्री अबाध वाणिज्य व्यवसाय there shall be no restriction by the state dismantling the license system or inspector raj license system means बाहरु विदेशी कंपनी बा विदेशी शिल्पोद्योगी माने बा देशीय शिल्पोद्योगी माने शिल्प कल कारखाना प्रतिष्ठा पाई जो लाइसेंस आणुयाकू व्यवस्था थिला बिफोर 1991 it was removed that was called inspector raj encouraging how kon parivartan hai encouraging the private capital and discouraging the state public capital or public sector units that was called disinvestment disinvestments is otherwise known as privatization राष्ट्र द्वारा परिचालित समस्त उद्योग गुड़ी को निरुत्साहित करागला कारण दैट वाज these sectors were loss making entrepreneurs राष्ट्र से राष्ट्र मालिकाना रे परिचालित शिल्प कल कारखाना रे राष्ट्र विपुल परिमाणर पुंजी विनियोग करिथिला सत राष्ट्रर अभिवृद्धि पई राष्ट्रीय आय पई राष्ट्र आशा करिथिला से बड़ी शिल्प कल कारखानारू किछि वार्षिक आय र अवदान पई मात्र से गुडी को कुपरिचालना जोगु करप्शन जोगु लैक ऑफ सिंसियरिटी रु एवं लैक ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजिकल अपग्रेडेशन जोगु से गुडी को लॉस रे चलुथला से गुडी को बंचेया पे इन रिटर्न राष्ट्र वर्ष को किछि परिमाणर सब्सिडी भी दोथला जा को जाउथला सब्सिडी राज these sectors were liability to the national economy of the state जातीय अर्थनीति प्रति से गुडी को एसेट हवा बदल रे लायबिलिटी हितला तेणु सेतिरु सरकार पुंजी प्रत्याहार जो पुंजी विनियोग करथिले गोटे प्रत्याहार कले अर्थात घरोई मालिकाना को सुडा टेकी देले अर्थात दीज इन्वेस्टमेंट पुंजी प्रत्याहार आउ केमिति पुंजी प्रत्याहार हला घरोई मालिकाना को दियाला प्राइवेटाइजेशन allowing foreign capital or multinational companies by corporations to invest in India and start their business operations here allowing FDI foreign direct investment in different sectors of the economy in the industrialization sector in the developmental sector in the service sector in the communication sector different sector सीधा सड़क वैदेशिक पुंजी विनियोग है क्या माध्यम थ्रू मल्टीनेशनल कंपनीज और मल्टीनेशनल कॉर्पोरेशंस MNCs at that time the market is accorded priority in welfare sectors like education health setting up the infrastructure etc market is accorded priority. State authority is accorded low priority. Market is accorded high priority in welfare sector. Education, विश्व स्तरीय शिक्षा व्यवस्था रे वैदेशिक पुंजी विनियोग है एवं वैदेशिक प्रतिष्ठान गुड़िक शिल्प विकसित राष्ट्र मानकर विश्वस्तरीय अनुष्ठान माने सीधा सड़क एठारे आसी अनुष्ठान प्रतिष्ठा कले भारत रे एवं शिक्षा प्रदान कले जा फल अर्थ विनिमय रे शिक्षार कमर्शियलाइजेशन हला अर्थ विनिमय रे विश्वस्तरीय एजुकेशन क्रय कराए जा फल देयर वाज ओपन market system, open competition system also. There was health sector where there was FDI, विश्वस्तरीय घरोई चिकित्सालय सब प्रतिष्ठित है. Infrastructure build है where while some argue in favor of the dominant role of the market, others argue that the market has to operate in collaboration with the state and the civil society organizations. Civil society organizations, not withstanding the differences among the supporters of the market forces. Market रो भली जो भूमिका से संपर्क रे द्विमत सृष्टि हेतला. Some argue in favor of the dominant role of the market. Others argue that market has to operate in collaboration with the state and civil organizations. ये सबू द्विमत सत्वे भी they all share the common understanding to accord principal place to the market in comparison to state authority. In the process of globalization, liberalization, privatization, there was the dominant role of market, there was the decline role of state. The market is supposed to be part of the second green revolution. Green revolution refers to that revolution when India achieved self-reliant position in the field of agriculture. स्वाधीन भारत प्रथम सरकार थारू विभिन्न सरकार भारत रे कृषि उत्पादन वृद्धि निमंते जो पंचवार्षिक योजना सबू 5 year प्लान, फर्स्ट 5 year प्लान, सेकंड 5 year प्लान, थर्ड एमती सीरीज ऑफ 5 year प्लान्स ऊपर फोकस करथिले. सेतिर फर्स्ट, सेकंड, थर्ड ए तीनटा 5 year प्लान रो फोकस थिला ग्रीन रिवोल्यूशन, रिवोल्यूशन इन द फील्ड ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर. मीन्स revolution, how there was revolution in HYV, high yielding variety, अधिक उत्पादन क्षम बिहन. आगुरी 6 मासरे धान, खरीफ धान खूब अल्प परिमाण प्रोडक्शन होता. 3 मासरे 90 days भितरे ह्यूज आउटपुट सह एभली हाई यील्डिंग वेराइटी प्रस्तुत करागला. देयर वाज एग्रीकल्चरल इम्प्लीमेंट्स, यूज ऑफ एग्रीकल्चरल इम्प्लीमेंट्स, देयर वाज द इंक्रीजिंग स्कोप ऑफ irrigation facilities, there was the use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides. These were collectively responsible for green revolution. Green revolution achieved, that was the achievement in green revolution. भारत स्वाधीनता पाइला बेलू को प्राय 33 कोटी लोक भारत रे बसवास करथुले एवं सेही 1947 मसीह 33 कोटी लोकों भारत रे 4 मास अधिक निजस्व उत्पादित खाद्य शस्य नथिला. 8 मास रेंगुन रु चाउल अणा जाउथला इंपोर्ट करा जाउथला जाहाकू खाई भारतीय माने चलुथले सेतेबेले अमेरिका रु वेस्ट व्हीट खंडी गहम बोली कहा जाए जाहाकू से माने समुद्र रे फिंगी देवा कथा ताकू भारतीय माने खाउथले ए बड़ी अवस्था थिला परवर्ती समय रे भारतर जनसंख्या आज दिन में 125 कोटी किंतु भारत खाद्य शस्य क्षेत्र में सेल्फ रिलायंट दैट वाज कॉल्ड ग्रीन रिवोल्यूशन मार्केट इज सपोर्ट टू बी द पार्ट ऑफ द सेकंड ग्रीन रिवोल्यूशन से भली जो ग्रीन रिवोल्यूशन होता 1991 रे जो मार्केट सिस्टम इंप्लीमेंट करा गला इकोनॉमिक order जो market system that was also termed as second green revolution corporatization of agriculture contact farming profitable crops monocrop cultivation etc in the service sector the impact of market could be visible in the policies about the reduction of jobs in public institutions voluntary retirement schemes and contractual employments etc ये सब थिला ग्लोबलाइजेशन रो गोटिए गोटिए इफेक्ट state and market in the new context state and market in the new context the changes of the status of the state and market have occurred in a new context. The features of this context are decline of the Cold War and disintegration of the socialist bloc in 1980s and the rise of civil society organizations, intellectuals, NGOs and voluntary organizations. These developments resulted in the erosion of the monopoly of the state. Monopoly of the state as the principal agency of working for the welfare of the society. Apart from the market, the new agencies in terms of civil society came to acknowledged as the potential agencies of welfare of the people. Contextualizing state, market and social movements. The growing significance of the civil society. The social capital, social movements are considered to be indicative of the existence. Sir, sir.
Slide पुणी देखा जाउनी आउथेंटे कर दियो
हां सर
ते पिल्ला माने मधुरे के डिस्टर्ब कर दउछन तो
सर सर
पिल्ला माने के प्रेजेंट ना बटन में क्लिक करने बारंबार कहूजी ताद्रा डिस्टर्बेंस हो जाउजी पुणी अधा पिल्ला को देखा जाउ अधा पिल्ला को देखा जाउ
सर आसिला सर विजिबल हैला
हां सर ठीक है सर ओके सर
सर the growing significance of the civil society. The social capital, social movements are considered to be the indicative of the existence of democracy. The relationship of the social movements with the state and market can at best be seen through different ways. Firstly, the state's ability to meet the aspirations of the people. The state's ability to meet the aspirations of the people and their representation in the state agencies or organizations. And with the market also its ability to give the people what the state has been unable to do. এই ସମୟରେ ଗ୍ଲୋବାଲାଇଜେସନ ପ୍ରୋସେସ ରେ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରର ଯୋଉ ଦକ୍ଷତା ଜନସାଧାରଣଙ୍କର ଆଶା ଆକାଂକ୍ଷା ଏବଂ ଜନପ୍ରତିନିଧି ମାନଙ୍କର ଯେଉଁ ଆଶା ଆକାଂକ୍ଷା ତାକୁ ପୂରଣ କରିବାର ବ୍ୟର୍ଥତା ଏବଂ ମାର୍କେଟ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରର ଅଧୁରା କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକୁ संपूर्ण भाव में संपादन करिवार जो दक्षता ये दृष्टि सोशल मूवमेंट एंड स्टेट मार्केट को आमे जज करी पारिबा. Different sections of people started questioning the model of development and nation state building within a few years of implementation of the constitution. There were movements on the ethnic, linguistic, caste and class issues, the personalization of the state institutions by the political executive, along with the growing corruption, resulted in the Nava Nirman movement in Gujarat, are known as total revolution. Known as total revolution, and these movements was done by the political parties, mainly the opposition or the Congress, non-Congress parties. While the mobilization up to the 1960s had been done mainly by the political parties or the organizations related to them, since the 1970s the different social groups came to be mobilized by the non-party or apolitical organizations. Though in the due course of time, they became political. From the 1990s onwards, the issue of reservation in the private sector has also been added to the agenda of Dalit leaders and political organizations. They apprehend that privatization as a part of the globalization will result in the reduction of the government jobs. Government job re कटेल गवर्नमेंट जॉब रो स्कोप को यथा संभव कम करा जिबा एवं VRS वॉलंटरी रिटायरमेंट स्कीम जरिया रे बहु पदवी उच्छेद करा जिबा ग्लोबलाइजेशन प्राइवेटाइजेशन एंड लिबरलाइजेशन रो प्रोसेस रो पार्ट थिला so that the political organizations and Dalit leaders view that will harm the cause of social justice. They argue that in the light of the shrinkage of government jobs, following the privatization, reservation should be provided to Dalits in the private sector. This demand is, however, resented by the representatives of the market or the industrialists. But again, the issue has not resulted in a sustained collective action of Dalit. It is being raised in the pamphlets, press statements, or the party manifestos. Social capital denotes existence of associations among its members. As social movements are collective actions, social movements are collective actions. With the organization's leadership, ideology, policy, and strategy of mobilization, associations have become important part of social movements. The relationship of the social movements with the state and market can at best be seen in the state's ability to meet the aspirations of the people and their representation in the state agencies, their representation in the state agencies or organs, and with the market also its ability to give the people what the state has to unable to do. This is all about Unit 6. Then we shall go for Unit 7, that is most important, Dalit movement. Dalit movement. You know, in India, there was a section of people who are termed as Dalits. The term Dalit is a Marathi word. The term Dalit is a Marathi word. Literally means ground or broken into pieces. Literary means ground or broken to pieces. This term was popularized by Dalit Panthers in Maharashtra. The term Dalit was popularized by the Dalit Panthers in Maharashtra. Particularly, Dalits are referred to scheduled caste population in India. अनुसूचित जाति बोली कहती जाकू ताकू ही मुख्यतः दलित बोली भारत रे संबोधन करा जाए. And this class is called as Dalit because they are oppressed sections of the society. They are oppressed sections, so that they are called Dalit. Oppressed semanku दमन करी रखा जाइछि, दलित दलित करी रखा जाइछि, दलित sections of the society. Particularly scheduled castes. Scheduled castes कहार हिंदू वर्णाश्रम व्यवस्था रे सिस्टम रे. You know, Hindu Varna system has 4 classes, and the last one is scheduled caste Shudras, Ati Shudras, Avarnas boli tanku kuha jaye. They are these people were considered as impure and perhaps untouchables, and they were placed in the caste hierarchy which perpetuated inequality. सदा सर्वदा तांको प्रति social injustice, social inequality एवं oppression, exploitation, untouchable mindset रो सहित तांको व्यवहार करा जाए. And there are even some people who include scheduled casted children and other backward classes. से मानकू दलित बोली संबोधन करा जाए, से मानकू दलित बोली संबोधन करा जाए. विशेष करी भारत रे दलित आंदोलन उत्तर प्रदेश रो बहुजन समाज पार्टी बा BSP founded by Dalit leader Kansi Ram. It is primarily the Bahujan Samaj Party which in fact is responsible for the mobilization of the Dalits and the democratic upsurge revolving around the Dalits in the country. And prior to that, केवल बीएसपी द्वारा दलित मोबिलाइजेशन हेतला से कथा नुहे at the all India level Dr. Bhima Rao Ambedkar initiated the articulation of Dalit interests for the first time in the year 1920. In the 20s, 1920 दशकरे महाराष्ट्र प्रख्यात राजनैतिक दलित राजनैतिक नेता एवं एमिनेंट जूरिस्ट and founder of Indian Constitution, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar initiated the articulation. Prior to Ambedkar, there had been attempts to bring about reforms in their condition in some of the Indian states, for example, Phule in Maharashtra. But it was an attempt towards reform rather than towards mobilization of the Dalits for the political objectives. से समय रे स्वाधीनता पूर्व महाराष्ट्र रे फुले हुंतु बा डॉक्टर बी आर आंबेडकर से माने सदा सर्वदा दलित मानक पई समाज संस्कार को एक माध्यम दलित मानकर स्वार्थ को सुरक्षा करने पे समाज संस्कार को एक माध्यम भाव रे ग्रहण करथिले किंतु बहुजन समाज पार्टी हेउची प्रथम पॉलिटिकल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जे कि दलित मानकर मोबिलाइजेशन रिफॉर्म अनदर इज मोबिलाइजेशन बाय सोशल मूवमेंट ऑफ दलित्स मोबिलाइजेशन बीएसपी इज रेस्पॉन्सिबल first ever political party towards mobilization of Dalits. You know, भारतीय समाज रे समुदाय जनसंख्यार 15.8% होचंती दलित. The Dalits constitute around 15.8% of entire Indian population and belong to the lower rungs of the Indian social ladder. Lower rungs सामाजिक सीढ़ी रे शेष पहाचरे ए दलित माने रहिचंती सामाजिक दृष्टिकोणरू अर्थनैतिक दृष्टिकोणरू एवं अन्यान्य न्यायिक दृष्टिकोणरू. According to 1991 census, their number was 138 million persons, that is around 15.8% of the Indian population. According to 2001 census, they constitute more than 1,1666 lakhs and around 16.2% of the entire population. They are spread throughout the country, though they are concentrated more in some states like Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Bihar, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Rajasthan, Odisha, Maharashtra. Their population is spread throughout the parliamentary and assembly segments, but in the country as a whole it constitutes around 1/3 of the electorate. 1/3 of the electorate जेते संख्यक निर्वाचक अछंती सेति मध्यरु 1/3 होचंती दलित वर्गर. The Dalitas not only belong to the lower caste category but also belong to the lower class category of the Indian society. They are mainly poor peasants. कौन करंती से माने होचंती गरीब कृषि कृषक sharecroppers, bhago chasi, sharecroppers, and agricultural laborers, krushi shramiko, ଗ୍ରାମୀଣ ଅର୍ଥନୀତିରେ ସେମାନଙ୍କର ଭୂମିକା ହେଉଛି ଏଇଆ। In the urban economy, they basically form the bulk of the laboring population. Labor class ଲୋକମାନେ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ଦଳିତ। Studies show that conditions of the Dalitas in the country as a whole has not changed significantly over the years. 1947 ମସିହା ଠାରୁ ଆଜି ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଯେଉଁ ସ୍ତରରେ ସେମାନଙ୍କର ଗ୍ରୋଥ ହବା କଥା ସାମାଜିକ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିକୋଣରୁ, ଅର୍ଥନୈତିକ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିକୋଣରୁ, ନ୍ୟାୟିକ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିକୋଣରୁ ତାହା ହୋଇପାରି ନାହିଁ। Because there is the policy of protective discrimination, an elite has emerged among Dalits, and it is these elite who have been the main beneficiaries of the state policies. As D.L. Seth has noted that middle class that comprised essentially of the upper caste now includes a small section of the lower caste of Dalit. अर्थात एतरु बुझा पड़ुची दलित मानक पाई राष्ट्र जेते प्रकार योजना करिची से योजना गुडी को सेही दलित मानकर गोटिए नेतृत्व क्षुद्र नेतृत्व संपन्न गोष्ठी सबु हातेई नहीं चंती। सामग्रिक भाव रे सबु प्रत्येक दलित निकट रे सरकारी योजना पहुंची बारे से माने बाधा सृष्टि करचंदी बा पहुंची पारी नहीं। As a result, their growth is not significant in the post-independent or contemporary India. Another change may also be noted that it is blatant from the caste discrimination which was practiced for centuries is not practiced in India today. किंतु जना पड़ी पूर्वर दलित मान प्रति अन्य तीन वर्गर जो दृष्टिभंगी थिला से बहु परिवर्तन होती बिकॉज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल स्ट्रैटेजी स्टेट एटीट्यूड एंड द upsurge of Dalitas, emancipation of Dalitas are responsible for that. Political mobilization of the Dalitas. Political mobilization in the pre-independence period. स्वाधीन तोर भारत एवं स्वाधीनता पूर्वर भारत प्री इंडिपेंडेंस स्वाधीनता पूर्वर भारत रे आंबेडकर 1920 मसीह करथिले। महाराष्ट्र फुले मध्य आंदोलन करथिले जे गुडी को संस्कार धर्मी वास्तव थिला। पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस पीरियड रे द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ द AISCF was a very significant development in the history of Dalit mobilization in the country, though it was not much successful and suffered defeat in the elections of 1946 and again in 1951. All India's Scheduled Caste Forum, AISCF, All India Scheduled Caste Forum, was responsible for the significant development of the mobilization of Dalitas, because it was that political outfit which mobilized the Dalitas to participate in 1946 election, 1951 election. These reversals convinced Ambedkar that a separate political party was required which will have a wider electoral strategy. After his death in 1956, the All India Scheduled Caste Forum was dissolved and the Republican Party of India (RPI) was formed in 1956. The party, the first of its kind, accepted the fundamental provisions of the Constitution and vowed to pursue its objective through the medium of parliamentary democracy. It functioned for almost 2 decades and was successful in establishing its base in the state of Maharashtra and to a limited extent in the state of Uttar Pradesh, though it is in the latter the RPI succeeded more in electoral terms than in Maharashtra. By the mid 1960s, RPI had established itself in the state of Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh. These were the states in which it had a strong presence. Very soon, however, the RPI weakened, largely because of internal differences on the issue of aligning with the Congress. Congress ସହିତ tie-up ରଖିବା ବା ନ ରଖିବା ଏ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିଭଙ୍ଗୀକୁ ନେଇ ରିଭଲ୍ୟୁସନାରୀ ପାର୍ଟି ଅଫ୍ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆର ନେତାମାନଙ୍କ ମଧ୍ୟରେ ମତଭେଦ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହୋଇଥିଲା ଏବଂ ଦଳ ଦୁର୍ବଳ ହୋଇ ପଡ଼ିଥିଲା. A section of the leadership within the party was pragmatic and was interested in joining hands with the Congress, whereas others were in the view that an alliance with the Congress would lead to a dilution of the greater objective of the party for promoting solidarity of the scheduled caste population in the country. And the failure of RPI then lead to formation of Bahujan Samaj Party in Uttar Pradesh. The formation of Bahujan Samaj Party in Uttar Pradesh by Kansiram in the year 1984 marks a new beginning in the history of Dalit mobilization and politics in the country. One of the significant features of the BSP happens to be the fact that it has succeeded at least partially, particularly in North India, where Ambedkar and Ambedkarites held in their objectives in the country for more than 50 years. ଆମ୍ବେଦକର ଏବଂ ତାଙ୍କ ସମର୍ଥକ ମାନେ 50 ବର୍ଷ ଧରି ଯାହା କରିପାରି ନଥିଲେ, ବିଏସପି ବହୁଜନ ସମାଜ ପାର୍ଟି ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେବାର ମାତ୍ର କେଇଟା ବର୍ଷ ଭିତରେ ତାହାଠାରୁ ଅଧିକ ହାସଲ କରିପାରିଥିଲା. ଉତ୍ତରପ୍ରଦେଶ, ମଧ୍ୟପ୍ରଦେଶ, ରାଜସ୍ଥାନ, ମହାରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ଭଳି ରାଜ୍ୟରେ ଏହାର ଷ୍ଟ୍ରଙ୍ଗ ପ୍ରେଜେନ୍ସ ଏବଂ ଉତ୍ତରପ୍ରଦେଶରେ ଏହା ଏକ ରୁଲିଂ ପାର୍ଟି ମଧ୍ୟ ଥିଲା. Firstly, it was a regional political party, then it became a national political party to meet the cause of Dalitas and for the mobilization of Dalitas. It was the champion political party. Its ideology, the BSP ideology, has to be understood in the background of overall effort made towards mobilization of Dalits since national movement in India. It must be noted in the beginning that its ideology has been shifting from time to time according to strategic need and BSP still working for the cause of Dalitas. Other than the Dalit leaders, Mahatma Gandhi, the father of Indian nation, had started Dalit movement. Before independence, Mahatma Gandhi दलित मानकु सदा सर्वदा ईश्वर का संतान भाव देखती मत पोषण करती एवं दलित मानकु समाज रो मुख्य स्रोत रे शामिल करने छुआ छुआ भेदभाव को संपूर्ण रूपे उठे दवा कार्य कर सारी। This is about Dalit movement. Other Dalit leaders are Jagat Jeevan Ram, Jagat Jeevan Ram, महात्मा गांधी, आंबेडकर तो हमें पढ़िले एमान सब होचंती नारायण गुरु रामस्वामी नाइजर एमान सब होचंती राजश्री छत्रपति साहूजी महाराज एमान सब होचंती दलित मानकर जड़े जड़े प्रख्यात नेता। महात्मा गांधी युवा अवस्था वर्ण वैषम्यवाद शिकार होते भारतर अस्पृश्यता को दक्षिण आफ्रिकार वर्ण वैषम्यवाद सहित से तुलना करते 1932 मसीह से हरिजन सेवक संघ प्रतिष्ठा करी छुआ छुआ भेदभाव को संपूर्ण रूपे निराकरण करने कार्य करथिले। This is all about Dalit movement in India. Next we shall go for Unit 8, backward class movement. Backward class movements. You know, backward class बा पछुआ वर्ग भारत रे पछुआ वर्ग रूपक एक श्रेणी सृष्टि होईची। Particularly it is a loose concept. पछुआ वर्ग बा backward caste is a loose concept. Sociologically, these classes consist of a large number of the backward castes which remain above the scheduled caste and below the upper caste. मझी स्थान रे थिबा बा निम्न मध्यवित्त श्रेणीर लोकन को पछुआ वर्ग बोली कहा जाउची सोशियोलॉजिकली एंड इकोनॉमिकली। These castes consist of intermediate class मध्य वर्गर जनसाधारण किए कृषक श्रेणी आर्टिजान शिल्पी माने सर्विस कास्ट सेवा प्रदानकारी व्यक्ति समूह से माने सब होचंती पछुआ वर्ग। In the traditional social and economic structures, while the intermediary castes were involved in the production process in the land, the service castes and the artisans provided services to the society. भारतीय समाज रे पछुआ वर्ग को चिन्हिबा कष्टकर कारण से माने एका प्रकारर नुहंती। Backward classes is a very loose concept. किए से पछुआ वर्ग ता चिन्हिबा एते सहज कथा न। साधारणतः भारत रे ब्राह्मण और दलितों व्यतीत अन्य वर्गर लोकों को पछुआ वर्ग बोली कहा जाए। The OBCs in fact include heterogeneous caste groups with differences in their social and economic conditions, and political participation. Even the OBCs, which share common characteristics in terms of their place in the social hierarchy, differ from each other depending on their agrarian history. Not all intermediary castes, which are now identified as OBCs, belonged to the inferior groups. Belong to the inferior groups. So far as their position in the agrarian structure was concerned. For example, Jats in most part of Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, which also consisted of the areas of present-day Haryana and Bharatpur region of Rajasthan, were a dominant community even in the pre-independence period. Pre-independence period. They had their on traditional caste councils or khaps headed by the hereditary chief or chaudhuri to manage their judicial and social affairs. To get categorized or recognized as OBC a political issue, ପଛୁଆ ବର୍ଗ କିଏ ତାକୁ ଚିହ୍ନିବା ଏବଂ ଚିହ୍ନେଇବା ଏକ ରାଜନୈତିକ issue. A community should possess enough political clout to get itself identified as an OBC. There are several instances of demand by the castes who get themselves identified as OBCs. In the year 1999, the Rajasthan government, and the year 2000, the Uttar Pradesh government added the Jats to the list of OBC. Socio-economic conditions of the backward classes, impact of the state policies. The backward classes emerged as a powerful social, economic and political bloc during the post-independence period in the countryside as a result of the policies of the state. But there have remained internal differentiation among them. While the intermediary castes came to control the affairs of the village society, the artisans and the service castes joined the ranks of the marginalized groups in the wage laborers, marginals, and the poor farmers. ପଛୁଆ ବର୍ଗର ଲୋକଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ସାମାଜିକ ଆଉ ଅର୍ଥନୈତିକ ସମାନତା ନଥାଏ। ସମ୍ବିଧାନ ପ୍ରଣୟନ ସଭାରେ ଏକ ପଛୁଆ ବର୍ଗ କମିଶନ ମନୋନୀତ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ନିଷ୍ପତ୍ତି ହୋଇଥିଲା, ଯାହାର କାର୍ଯ୍ୟ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ରାଜ୍ୟ କେନ୍ଦ୍ରଶାସିତ ଅଞ୍ଚଳରେ ପଛୁଆ ବର୍ଗଙ୍କୁ ଚିହ୍ନଟ କରି ସେମାନଙ୍କ ଅବସ୍ଥାର ଉନ୍ନତି ପାଇଁ ସରକାରଙ୍କୁ ପରାମର୍ଶ ଦେବା ପାଇଁ ଧାର୍ଯ୍ୟ କରାଯାଇଥିଲା। MSA ରାଓ ପଛୁଆ ବର୍ଗକୁ 4 ଭାଗରେ ବିଭକ୍ତ କରିଛନ୍ତି। 1. ଦକ୍ଷିଣ ଭାରତର ଅଣ ବ୍ରାହ୍ମଣ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ, ଯଥା ବିଂଶ ଶତାବ୍ଦୀର ଗୋଟିଏ ଦଶକରେ ମାନ୍ଦ୍ରାଜର ଆତ୍ମସମ୍ମାନ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ, ମହାରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ଓ ତାମିଲନାଡୁର ଅଣ ବ୍ରାହ୍ମଣ ମାନେ ସାଂସ୍କୃତିକ ପ୍ରସଙ୍ଗରେ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ କରିଥିଲେ। ବିହାର କୁଡୁମି ଓ ଅହିର ମାନଙ୍କ ଭଳି ନିମ୍ନ ମଧ୍ୟମ ଜାତିର ଲୋକଙ୍କର ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ, ମହାରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରର ମାଳି, ଗୁଜରାଟର କୋଲି, ପଞ୍ଜାବର ଜୋନିଆ ମାନଙ୍କର ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ। 3ରେ ନିଷ୍ପେଷିତ ଅସ୍ପୃଶ୍ୟ ଶ୍ରେଣୀର ଉଚ୍ଚ ଜାତି ଓ ଅନ୍ୟାନ୍ୟ ପଛୁଆ ବର୍ଗଙ୍କ ବିରୋଧରେ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ। 4ରେ ଜନଜାତି ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ। ପଛୁଆ ବର୍ଗ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନକୁ ନେଇ 2 ପ୍ରକାରର ବିଚାରଧାରା ଦେଖିବାକୁ ମିଳେ। ଉତ୍ତର ଭାରତରେ ଅହିର, ବେଙ୍ଗଲର ଗୋପ, ମହାରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ଗୁଆଲି, ଆନ୍ଧ୍ରପ୍ରଦେଶ କର୍ଣ୍ଣାଟକର ଗୋଲା, ଯଦୁବଂଶ ଠାରୁ ଅଲଗା ତାମିଲନାଡୁର କୋନ୍ନର ଇତ୍ୟାଦି। ବିଂଶ ଶତାବ୍ଦୀ ଦ୍ୱିତୀୟ ଦଶନ୍ଧିରେ ସେମାନେ ସର୍ବଭାରତୀୟ ଯାଦବ ସଂଘ ଗଠନ କରିଥିଲେ। ଯାଦବ ମାନେ ପଛୁଆ ବର୍ଗର ଅଗ୍ରଣୀ ବୋଲି ଧରି ନିଆଯାଏ। ସ୍ୱାଧୀନ ସ୍ୱାଧୀନୋତ୍ତର ଭାରତରେ ପଛୁଆ ବର୍ଗର ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ in comparison to North India, the backward classes in South India were mobilized much earlier. They not only got reservation in the government jobs, but they were also mobilized into social movement and entered politics in South India much before than the backward classes of North India. उत्तर भारतर पछुआ वर्ग मानक पूर्वरु दक्षिण भारतर पछुआ वर्ग माने राजनीति रो मुख्य स्रोत को आसीबा, राजनीति रे कर्णधार साजिबा एवं चाकरी रे संरक्षण आदि हासिल करी सारी थिले. The scholars explain the difference between North and South in different ways. The Brahmins had monopolized the high caste domination over the low caste in South India, and their number in comparison to Brahmins of North India was much smaller in contrast. The Brahmins were not the only high caste in North India. Their domination over the lower caste was shared, thus diluted, by several high castes, Rajputs, Kayats, or even Vaishyas. In North India, the organization like Arya Samaj spread the message among the backward classes that it was the karma, not the birth, which determined the place of person in society. The electoral mobilization, राजनीति रे अंशग्रहण एवं निर्वाचन रे अंशग्रहण. The backward class politics in India has largely been related to electoral mobilization and creation of support base among them by the political parties and leaders. Other issues like the reservation for the OBCs or their mobilization on the class issues like those related to the farmers also get linked to the electoral politics. The increasing participation of OBCs, their entry into the state legislature, राज्य विधान सभा को एवं लोकसभा को, राज्य सभा को समानंकर प्रवेश as public representatives is indicative of the empowerment of backward classes. Backward class पछुआ वर्ग रो सशक्तिकरण हला बोली धरिया जाए. During the post independent period, there have been attempts on the parts of individual leaders and political organizations to mobilize backward classes into participatory politics, while the backward classes in South India emerged before the independence and they benefited from this legacy in the post-independent period. The main leaders of political parties which mobilized backward classes in North India include Charan Singh, Chaudhary Charan Singh, who became the Prime Minister of India once, Karpuri Thakur. Socialist parties and different political formations at different point of times like Samajwadi Party, Rashtriya Janata Dal in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. उत्तर प्रदेश रे समाजवादी पार्टी पछुआ वर्ग रा लक्ष्य उद्देश्य को हासिल करबा दिगरे सृष्टि होइतिला. अनुरूप भाव रे राष्ट्रीय जनता दल बिहार रे लालू प्रसाद यादव का राष्ट्रीय जनता दल एवं मुलायम सिंह यादव समाजवादी पार्टी. चौधरी चरण सिंह craved out a political base for himself among the middle caste peasantry in UP and Bihar through a well-designed strategy. And you know, politics of reservation, you know, at the same time Charan Singh was attempting to crave out a base among the backward classes in UP. The socialists were also involved in pursuit of North India. An attempt to end the monopoly of high caste, Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia sought to mobilize the backward classes as soon as he broke away from the Congress. Congress ru bahari jai Congress परित्याग करी Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia पछ ओबीसी मानक पई कार्य करिथिले. He advocated 60% reservation for the backward classes, Dalitas and minorities in the government jobs. Merger of the Indian National Backward Class Federation, a splinter group of the All India Backward Class Federation in 1957. The Socialist Party brought the socialists and backward classes together, though throughout the 1960s, 1960 दशक socialists and backward class leadership continued to raise the issue of backward classes. The most important of these was the demand to implement Kaka Kalkar report. Leaders like Mulayam Singh Yadav, B.P. Mandal were active during the period, but by the 1970s, AIBCF became defunct. Politics of reservation, the introduction of Mandal Commission report by V.P. Singh government in 1990 recommending 70% reservation for OBCs in the central government jobs made the reservation a national issue in Indian politics. 1990 मसीहारे भारतर प्रधानमंत्री विश्वनाथ प्रताप सिंह मंडल कमिशन रिपोर्ट को कार्यकारी करिथिले एवं केंद्र सरकार समस्त चाकरी रे पछुआ वर्गों 27% रिजर्वेशन रखिथिले. सेही समयरू रिजर्वेशन as a burning issue became core of Indian politics. It not only drew reactions in its support or against it, it also changed the contours of Indian politics. The appointment of Mandal Commission by the Janata Party government in 1990 was the result of the pressure of the backward class leadership and their clout, as mentioned earlier by the 1970s backward classes. The demand for reservation for the backward classes was raised by the Constituent Assembly by Punjab Rao Deshmukh, like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had raised the similar demand for the scheduled caste. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar जो बड़ी scheduled caste मानक पाई दाबी करथिले, पंजाब राव देशमुख ओबीसी मानक पाई संविधान प्रणयन सभा रे सेही भली दाबी रखिथिले. In order to articulate the reservation issue for the backward classes, he founded All India Backward Class Federation, AIBCF, on 26th January 1950. The implementation of Mandal Commission report, however, has not settled the issue of reservation. Newer groups continue to demand to be recognized themselves as OBCs. Whether a community can get itself identified as OBCs is a political question. It depends on the political factor. This is all about OBCs. Then it is about Unit 9, ethnic movements with special reference to tribals. Ethnic movements with special reference to tribals, and particularly it is tribal movement. Tribal movement. जनजाति आंदोलन. जनजातीय आंदोलन. Ethnicity denotes identification of a group of people on the basis of certain criteria or markers which they are supposed to share with each other. These markers include culture, race, language, religion, customs, history, economic experiences, etc. For a group of people to share such attributes, another requirement is that they get mobilized into some collective action for attainment of certain demands. Collective action means movement. Collective action means movement. It is the social movement of ethnic groups. Language-based ethnic group, race-based ethnic group, culture-based ethnic group, religion-based ethnic group, customs-based based ethnic group, history-based, economic experience-based. The number of markers or attributes which form the basis of ethnic group depends on the choice of these factors by the ethnic group or its leadership. But there are differences among the scholars regarding the number of attributes which constitute an ethnic group. Scholars in India generally consider that mobilization as ethnic, which is based on the multiple attributes language, religion, culture, history, economic, etc. For example, language-based mobilization is considered as linguistic mobilization, and the groups such as considered as a linguistic group. Ethnicity is also a relative term. Ethnicity is also a relative term. An ethnic group differentiates itself from another group which also shares certain criteria, certain attributes which are different from it. It feels that it has to preserve its identity and interests from the perceived or real threats of ethnic groups and institutions and processes associated with them. Ethnic movements are concerned with the preservation and protection of the cultural identities of the ethnic groups and their other interests. Another concept which is related to the ethnicity is nationality or nation. While some scholars differentiate between ethnicity, nationalities, or even nations, they are used interchangeably. Approaches to the study of ethnic movements. Approaches to the study of ethnic movements. There are number of approaches. There are number of approaches to the study of ethnic movements. First is primordial. First is primordial. Primordial or instrumentalist approach. Secondly, both primordial and instrumentalist approach joined together forms another approach. The primordial approach holds that the basis of the formation of ethnic groups are given. They are traits of an ethnic group which are inherited by them. Culture, language, customs, religion, etc. Similarly, other ethnic group also has certain inherited characteristics since the differences in the markers of various ethnic groups vary from each other. They involve in the ethnic movements because of these given traits. There are bound to be conflict between different ethnic groups. The advocates of the instrumentalist approach. The advocates of the instrumentalist approach assume that the ethnic groups are creation of the leadership or the elites belonging to these groups. The differences in language, culture, custom, economic conditions of the people or the social cleavages are manipulated by the elites of the ethnic groups to generate ethnic consciousness and start ethnic movements. Ethnic movements during post-independence period, a general view. Almost all the major regions of the country have witnessed ethnic movements. They take the form of movements for regional autonomy, for creation of separate states, demand for secession or insurgency. Secession means disintegration from the nation. राष्ट्र ठारू विच्छिन्न होई एक स्वाधीन राष्ट्र गठन पाई जो मूवमेंट हेतिला एथनिक मानक द्वारा ताकू कहा जाए डिमांड फॉर सेसेशन. Another is insurgency. Insurgency means rebellion against the constitutional government. These manifestations of ethnic movements are also called self-determination movements. Atmanirdharana. In several cases, ethnic movements give rise to conflicts or riots on the lines of ethnic divided based on all or some of the markers: tribe, caste, language, religion, etc. The self-determination movements actually question the nation-state building model, which was introduced by the independent India, known as Nehru and Mahalanobis model. This model presumed that the course of development or modernization in identities formed on the basis of ascriptive factors. These factors are language, caste, tribe, religion, will disappear and the development will take place on the secular lines. In Tamil Nadu, following the legacy of E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, three issues formed the basis of ethnic movement in the movement. In the past 2 decades following independence: language, Dravidian culture, and religion. Ethnic movement for creation of separate state of Andhra Pradesh in south, movements in Jammu and Kashmir and Punjab, and Shiv Sena against South Indians in Mumbai are the examples of ethnic movement. The state was initially reluctant to consider the demand for the linguistic reorganization of the state, but it had to consider this demand following the death of Gandhian Srinivasulu, who died for hunger strike demanding a linguistic state for Andhra Pradesh. Government's acceptance of demand to create Andhra Pradesh led to the reorganization of the states in the linguistic basis in 1953. Odisha was the first state to be reorganized as a special new province for Odiyas in the name of language. The ethnic movements in Punjab was based on 3 types of issues: regional, religious, and economic, spearheaded by Akali Dal. The leadership in Punjab argued that since Sikhs follow a separate religion and speak different language, they should get a separate state. On the same occasions, it got reflected in the communal divide between the Hindus and Sikhs in the state, resulting in the ethnic conflict. Ethnic conflict, Hindu-Sikh conflict. They launched a Punjabi Subha movement during the 1950s and 1960s, demanding a separate state for Punjab for them as Khalistan. Khalistan movement. Baladev Raj Nair observes that Akali Dal's strategy during the Punjabi Subha movement included constitutional means like memorandum, rallies, marches, penetration into the Congress organization in order to influence the party in favor of a separate state. The Khalistan movement also resulted in the ethnic divide between the Hindus and Sikhs in Punjab. Ethnic movements with special reference to tribals. Tribals, you know, ethnic movements of the tribals of India. In fact, the tribals provide the most appropriate examples of the ethnic movements in the country. In their case, almost all factors, both real and imagined, which the tribal communities share among themselves, culture, customs, language, race, religion, indigenous or otherwise, economic issues, contribute to their mobilization. Even if their mobilization starts with a single marker, it is the multiple marker which come to play their role in due course. Tribal ethnic movements find their expression in all forms, as discussed in section 9.4. Insurgency, protection of the culture and economy of the sons of the soil from the outside exploiters. Succession from Union of India, autonomy movements, demand for separate state and ethnic conflicts and riots. The tribals follow multiple religions in the country. There are tribals in the religion Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, or their indigenous religions. However, there is almost a unanimity among the scholars on certain characteristics of the tribals. The principal of these characteristics are as follows. First, their close association with nature, mainly the forests. Secondly, tribals relatively traditional means of cultivation. Tribals rely on traditional means of cultivation and less developed market. Thirdly, near absence of the rigid division within the community and discrimination on the basis of birth, unlike the caste division among the Hindus. Fourthly, presence of the traditional chiefs or headmen and better position of women as compared to the non-tribals. Lastly, attachment, reverence to tribal customs and culture. These are regarded as tribals. Tribals of Northeast India or the frontier tribes. Northeast India as a single region has the largest number of tribal population in the country. They follow different religions, especially Christian, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Indianism. The subsection, we can find out ethnic movements with examples from the state of Northeast India, particularly Nagaland, Assam, and Meghalaya. एमान सब होचंदी नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडिया उत्तर पूर्व भारतर जो 7टी राज्य अछि सेथि मध्यरु आसाम मेघालय नागालैंड रे आदिम अधिवासी एथनिक ग्रुप भाव रे बसवास करती. इट इज इंपोर्टेंट टू नोट ethnic issues of Northeast India related to the geographical factors, its regional dimensions. Though there are differences among the tribals of northeast India in terms of their cultural practices, they share common experience of deprivation due to their regional location. The Nagas, Nagaland re, the Nagas. The movement of Nagas, which is often referred to as Naga insurgency, is called the Naga National Movement by the Nagas. It is the oldest movement relating to the ethnicity or the nationality question in the country. The nationality, ethnicity in Nagaland had all dimensions relating to the ethnic movement, demand for autonomy, succession from India, and ethnic conflicts. Nagas believe that they form a nation which is different from other ethnic groups or nationalities, nations in India. Bodojin of Assam. The tribals of Assam, like Bodos, Kharbis, Adivasis, have been involved in collective ethnic mobilization since 1980s. The Bodos and Kharbis are demanding creation of separate states respectively from within the present Assam. Assam को भांगी डिसइंटीग्रेट करी विभिन्न प्रकार आदिम आदिवासी गोष्ठी यथा बोडोज हैब्रिज सेमानक पई स्वतंत्र राष्ट्र दाबी करथिले. The Adivasis consist of tribes like Orans, Santalas, who mainly immigrated to the state during the colonial period as tea plantation laborers, principally from Odisha, Bihar, and eastern Uttar Pradesh. Apart from working as the plantation laborers, they also cultivate land as poor peasants. The Adivasis demand protection of their rights in terms of reservation in the government jobs, protection from the dominant ethnic tribes, as there have been several instances of violent ethnic groups riots among between the Bodos and the Adivasis. Tribes of Meghalaya. Meghalaya has three main tribes: the Khasis, Jaintias, and Garos, who inhabit Khasi, Jaintian, and Garos hills of the state. They are distinct for the existence matrilineal system which accords better position to women as compared to patrilineal found among other communities of India. Like some other tribes of the northeast India, educated Christian elite had already emerged among them in the state. Especially the Khasis during the pre-independence period, Shillong, which remained capital for around a century of Assam, of which areas consisting present Meghalaya state were constituent, provided a suitable place for the growth of an allied section among them. Tribals of regions other than northeast India or the non-frontier tribes. The tribals of other regions other than northeast India or frontier tribes of the states of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and several other states have been mobilized on ethnic lines on several occasions. Bisra Munda revolt in Chhota Nagpur was among the most prominent of such movements during the pre-independence period. Such movements have been termed as millenarian movements by K.S. Singh. अनुसूचित जनजाति बोली से कहते शेड्यूल्ड ट्राइब भारतीय जनसंख्यार शतकड़ा 8 भाग से अटंती 2010 मसीह संख्या 820 लक्ष थिला समग्र देश रे से मुख्यतः दुई प्रकार सीमावर्ती फ्रंटियर जनजाति नॉन फ्रंटियर ट्राइबल्स मध्य प्रदेश रे जनजाति संख्या शतकड़ा 23 भाग ओडिशा रे 22 राजस्थान में 22 बिहार रे शतकड़ा 8 गुजरात रे शतकड़ा 14 दादरा नगर हवेली यूनियन टेरिटोरी रे शतकड़ा 79 लाक्षाद्वीप रे 94% आर इंडिजिनियस ट्राइबल ग्रुप्स भारतीय संविधान रो धारा 366 क्लॉज 25 रे वर्णना करा जायछि जे अनुसूचित जनजाति संविधान रो धारा 342 अनुसार अनुसूचित जाति बोली धरा जिबे शेड्यूल ट्राइब जनजाति आंदोलन जनजाति मानकर सामाजिक आंदोलन को विभिन्न प्रकार विभक्तिकरण करा जायछि एक प्रतिक्रियाशील आंदोलन ए आंदोलन रे अतीतर भल दिन को मन पका जाए एवं से परिवर्तन को विरोध करा जाए रक्षणशील आंदोलन स्थितावस्था बजाय रखा और परिवर्तन न आनिबा रूपक आंदोलन को आदिवासी मानकर बा ट्राइबल मानकर रक्षणशील आंदोलन बोली कहा जाए तीन रे पुनः समीक्षा आंदोलन रीएनालिसिस मूवमेंट ये आंदोलन वर्तमान रो भूल व्यवस्था भूल प्रथा और भूल परंपरा रे परिवर्तन आनी था दिस इज ऑल अबाउट ethnic then unit 10 women's movement नारी आंदोलन यूनिट 10 नारी आंदोलन colonialism in India in the 18th and 19th century brought new economic and political process into operation. New economic and political process into operation. The coming of the British, the Christian missionaries and their criticism of the Indian society presented a big challenge to the local intellectuals and social leaders. The former attacked the indigenous society and its treatment of women and the lower caste. Treatment of women and lower castes. It presented a new organizing principle, equality or Christianity in some cases. It also brought a blueprint for a new organizing principle for the society. विश्व जनसंख्या रे सबुठारु बेसी जो माने पातर अंतरर शिकार होती से माने होचंती महिला महिला माने समस्त प्रकार पातर अंतरर शिकार हेउथवारु साइमन डी बोभय कटाक्ष करी से मानकु सेकेंड जेंडर बोली संबोधन करिसेंती सेकेंड जेंडर and for that reason there are numerous collective actions by women group as social movement. Collective actions equipped with their agenda, equipped with their leadership, ideologies and organizations in order to have their proper and dignified place in all aspects of life. Women as individuals and as a group are among the most discriminated sections of the world population. As a marker of this discrimination, societies across the world have shown preference for boy child. The preference for boy child has taken societies to the extent of killing girl child in the womb itself. All practices of indiscrimination in societies have been legitimized through either invoking socio-cultural needs or the need to maintain a lineage or for material production. As the second sex, second gender, in material terms means that women is quite often denied political, economic, and even cultural rights. She quite often does not have a right to inherit property along with her male counterpart. पुरुष भଳି नारी मानकर उत्तराधिकारी सूत्र रे संपत्ति उपरे कोनसी मालिकाना सत्व सुविधा समाज तंकु प्रदान करी नथिला. She does not have either equal access to education and health care equal to male counterpart. She is also perennially in the danger of being the target of male violence within the family or outside. Historically, religion, polity, and society have been so organized as to make her position vulnerable to any discriminatory trends in the society. This was the position of women in our society. The relation between women and social movement is quite intricate, for that one is not very clear as to where and how do women figure in the broad contour of different social movements, collective actions. It had been found that women were merely part of the mobilized sections of some movement whose overall objectives are detrimental to women's interest and concern. Secondly, related to the nature of social movement is whether it allows the space for the articulation of issues and concern regarding women. Historically, changing conditions of women and their status constituted the core of the social reform movement that began to take shape in the early decades of the 19th century. By the early decades of 19th century, this core is enlarged by bringing two issues: equality of women in modern political, social, and cultural realm, and women's role in the developmental process into its ambit. Though the rapid changes in the society, economy, and culture have led to the rethinking on many issues, the social movements in the country more or less have directed their concern about women along this core. The colonial context, the vision of new society, and the reform movement. In British India, in the 18th and 19th century, that brought a new economic and political process into operation. The coming of the British, the Christian missionaries, and their criticism of the Indian society presented a big challenge. Big challenge. In the 19th century, Hindu, Parsi, Muslim reformers took the challenge and fast tried to reform their own societies in the face of such a massive criticism. Raja Ram Mohan Rai, for example, while he attacked the missionaries for presenting distorted picture, was also preparing agitation against sati and the customs of caste inequalities. In the latter part of this century, reformers took the questioning of women's condition very prominently, and all the major reform movement efforts aimed at ameliorating their conditions. Ishwara Chandra Vidyasagar made great efforts in getting widow marriage society, ବିଧବା ମାନଙ୍କର ପୁନଃ ବିବାହ ପ୍ରଥା ପ୍ରଚଳନ ଆଇନଗତ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିକୋଣରୁ established. Similarly, women's education too was brought to be one of the most important steps in this direction. Veer Silangam, Pontlu, Jyotiba Phule, Badruddin Tabji, Dada Bhai Naroji all contributed greatly in this direction. The issue of priority, social or political, सामाजिक दृष्टिकोणରୁ नारी ମାନଙ୍କୁ ଯଥା ସମ୍ମାନର ଅଧିକାରୀ ବୋଲି ବିବେଚନା କରାଯାଉଛି କିମ୍ବା ରାଜନୈତିକ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିକୋଣରୁ କରାଯାଉଛି ସେ ସମ୍ପର୍କରେ ତର୍କ ଅଛି, ଡିବେଟ୍ ଅଛି। Women issues during the Gandhian era. In the 1920s, Gandhian movements brought back a sense of unity on the women's question. ऊनविंश शताब्दी रे महिला मानकर स्थिति और सामाजिक शर्तरे परिवर्तन पाई सोशल मूवमेंट आरंभ होइथिला। विंश शताब्दी प्रारंभ रे महिला मानक समस्या पर दुईटी मुख्य प्रसंग थिला, जथा मॉडर्न सोसाइटी, पॉलिटिकल एवं कल्चरल कंडीशंस रे महिला मानकर समानता और समाज रो विकास प्रक्रिया रे महिला मानकर भूमिका। आधुनिक भारतीय महिला आंदोलन रो इतिहास रो चेर ऊनविंश शताब्दी जाए व्याप्त थिला। पुरुष माने महिला अधिकार पाई संगठन करी संघर्ष करुथिले। ऊनविंश शताब्दी रे शेष आडकू महिला माने निजर संगठन गढ़ी महिला आंदोलन पाई आगभर हेले। स्वाधीनता पूर्व दुईटी मुख्य प्रसंग महिला आंदोलन को आच्छादित करिथिला। स्वाधीनता संग्राम रे महिला मानकर अंशग्रहण द्वारा महिला आंदोलन व्यापक होइथिला। सेमाने पुरुष प्रधान समाज विरोध रे विषेधागार करी घर हिंसा को प्रसंग कले। राजनैतिक निष्पत्ति ग्रहण रे महिला माने सुजोग पाइले। जदिओ भारत रे महिला आंदोलन इतिहास समृद्ध अटे, तथापि लिंगगत समानता न्याय पाई महिला मानक अनेक दूर जीवाकू पड़िबो। महिला मानक आंदोलन तीनोटी स्तर, प्रथम पर्याय, द्वितीय पर्याय, तृतीय पर्याय। प्रथम पर्याय हला 1950 रु 1960। एई समय भितरे महिला मानक अधिकार गुने विभिन्न कार्यक्रम आरंभ होइतिला। 1960 रु 1970 एई दशक रे ग्रामीण गरीब और शिल्प श्रमिक आंदोलन में महिला माने जोग देइथिले। और 70 दशक शेष भाग रे नारीवाद उपर गुरुत्व दिया गला। विंश शताब्दी 70 दशक मध्य भाग रे भारतीय नारी मानकर जीवन यापन रे अवमूल्यन आसिला। 1970 रु 80 दशक मध्य रे नारी माने निजर स्वाधीनता बदला रे व्यक्तिगत प्रसंग रे आंदोलन को ओह्लाइले। The left and the women's movement, the Communist Party since 1950s not only provided women's leadership but also kept the women's question in the center of political discussion. However, with the split in the communist movements in 1964 and emergence of many new voices within the left movement, which questioned all assumptions of the Marxist parties, new ideas, and the organization principles to articulate demands and communities, and groups began to emerge. Equality or difference, new social movements by the late 80s, 1980 ମସିହା ପରେ ନବ୍ୟ ସାମାଜିକ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ ନାରୀ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ ନାମରେ ଗଢ଼ି ଉଠିଥିଲା। Women's movement in the meantime also tried to fight against the structures of the community and tradition, as they have been found quite often to the impediments in the way to equality and freedom. This was evident in the case of two powerful movements in the 1980s, one against the issue of dowry, another in the famous case of Rup Kanwar case ଏବଂ ସାମଗ୍ରିକ ଭାବରେ ଯୌତୁକ ପ୍ରଥା ବିରୋଧରେ ନାରୀ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ ବ୍ୟାପକ ହେଇଥିଲା ଏବଂ ସମଗ୍ର ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରର ଦୃଷ୍ଟି ଆକର୍ଷଣ କରିଥିଲା ନାରୀମାନଙ୍କୁ ସ୍ୱତନ୍ତ୍ର ଅଧିକାର ସୁଯୋଗ ପ୍ରଦାନ କରିବା ପାଇଁ। This is all about Unit 10. Now it is Unit 11, regional movements. Regional movement is an identity movement seeking special privileges, protection, and concessions from the state. It is a movement for regional self-governance. In other words, it means a movement for state formation, a movement seeking pluralization and federalization of existing polity and political process. There are two potential and significant causes of the emergence of regional movement. One is the inter-regional and inter-community conflict, and other is the conflict between region and the state. Methodological insights on a regional movements, especially in a diverse society like India, have contextualized formations. Therefore, it requires a potential analysis of the complex interplay of religion, region, people, and the state. When we say regional movement, it immediately refers to the existence of a regional community with political overtone. But how a regional community translates itself into a sub-national movement, to find an explainable answer, it has to take into consideration the methodological submission of the modernization or mobilization theory of nation formation. There are two crucial submissions of this theory. One is conversion of community into a movement is a process of mobilization by elite, intelligentsia, and leaders, and in order to provide further dynamics and cohesion to community consciousness, identity is reinvented and relocated in the contextual present. This may require contextual reconstruction and reinterpretation of identity contents of a regional community. Regional identity is also formed. What Marxist scholar Hobsbawm writes about nation as the point of intersection of politics, technology, and social transformation. Modern means communication and technological advancement create intentionally or non-unintentionally, a collective self of the people who organize themselves into a movement for getting fair. Then regional movements, regionalism and state formation, some causative explanation. India has been territorially reorganized into 29 states and 7 union territories. Out of these, we have today as many as 31 demands for statehood and sub-autonomy arrangements. They are Maru Pradesh in Rajasthan. Demands are Bundelkhand, Purbanchal, Bhojpur, and Harit Pradesh or Jharkhand in Uttar Pradesh. Vindhya Pradesh, Baghelkhand, Rewanchal, Madhya Bharat, Mahakoshal, Malwa in Madhya Pradesh. Mithila in Bihar, Saurashtra in Gujarat, Konkana, Vidarbha and Marathwada in Maharashtra. Telangana in Andhra Pradesh has been consented and a new Telangana state has been formed by bifurcating Andhra Pradesh into two. One is Andhra Pradesh, another is Telangana. Kurg, Kodagu and Sagari Prant in Karnataka, Kosala Rajya in Odisha, Gorkhaland and Kamtapuri in West Bengal, autonomy demands of Jammu and Ladakh regions in Jammu and Kashmir, Bodoland, Karbi, Anglong and Purbanchal in Assam, Kuki-land in Nagaland, Garo-land in Meghalaya, and Hamar state in Mizoram. Movements for these states are in different stages of mobilization. Some of them are strong and persistent. Others are dominant but occasionally reiterative. In the six major large states of Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and Andhra Pradesh, there only exist 16 major demands for statehood. Regional movement, salient features of movement for statehood. From it is found that the salient patterns of regional movements seeking separate state may be discerned. In India, territory and community are symbiotically linked. A region is known by the community which lives in it. And community is designated and characterized by the geospecific of the given region. The demand for separate statehood arises from the synthesis between two community and geography. A territorial community seeks separate state in order to be the sole arbiter of the cultural setting. Secondly, people having distinct socio-cultural identity concentrated in few contiguous districts within the existing state system seeks a separate state in order to preserve, protect and promote their identity. Some of the above mentioned regional movements seek constitutional recognition, protection and legitimization of their perspective, socio-cultural varieties by the state. Fourthly, located within the realm of identity and development, regionalism for sub-regional groups serves as an ideology. Types of regionalism. Iqbal Narayan has identified three major types of regionalism. One is supra-state regionalism, secondly inter-state regionalism, thirdly intra-state regionalism. Supra-state regionalism is built around issues of common interest in which a group of states from a common political alliance directed against each either the similar alliance of other states. States' response to regional movements. States' response to regional movement has been varying. We don't find any consistent policy in this regard. However, certain patterns and principles can be discerned in this regard. Secessionist demand could not be considered with, rather successions would be suppressed by all necessary means. Central government would not concede those regional demands based exclusively upon regional religious differences. SRC Commission, SRC recommendation, Government of India passed on November 1956 the State Reorganization Act. Since then, the number of states have been increased to 29 and Union Territory to 7 states formed since 1956 include Gujarat 1960, Nagaland 1963, Haryana 1966, Punjab 1966, Himachal Pradesh 1961, Manipur 1962, Meghalaya 1972, Tripura 1972, Sikkim 1975, Arunachal Pradesh 1987, Mizoram 1987, Goa 1987, Jharkhand 2000, Uttaranchal, Chhattisgarh 2000. With the formation of 3 new states of Uttaranchal, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Telangana, reorganizations have been effected for the first time in the Hindi heartland of Bihar. This is all about regionalism. Last one, religious and communal movement. Religious and communal movement. Both political parlance and academic discussion, the communal is used in a derogatory sense representing narrow sectarian interests. Communal identities can be formed on territorial, cultural, ethnic or religious basis, or on a combination of these all two, depending upon the emotional intensity that the people attach to a particular aspect of a nation. Communal identities can be formed on territorial, cultural, ethnic and religious basis. Hindu nationalists emphasize this common cultural and religious bond, creating an emotional attachment to this land and its people. The anti-Sikh riots following Indira Gandhi's assassination, the Bhagalpur massacre in 1989, the demolition of the Babri Masjid on December 6, 1992, attacks on missionaries in late 90s, and the havoc caused due to communal riots after the incident of Godhra in 2002 are some of the manifestations of majoritarian communal movements organized on religious lines. Communal and religious movements in respect. The Hindu communalism, Muslim communalism sentiments were also fanned on the issues of cow shelter, conversion by Christians and Muslims, Shuddhi movement was launched to reconvert the Hindus, was embraced Islam and Christianity by the Hindu revivalists like Arya Samaj and other Hindu Orthodox organizations. The dissension between the two communities arose on account of language and its script, as Hindus wanted to change the official script from the Persian to Hindu Devanagari script, effectively making Hindi rather than Urdu as the main candidate for the national language. Religious demography. Religious demography. The country has a total area of approximately 1.3 million square miles and a population of slightly more than 1 billion. Hindu communal and religious movement. Hindu revivalists movement during the 19th century prepared the ground for for right-wing politics, along with the religious issues took shape of Hindu community. ଦକ୍ଷିଣପନ୍ଥୀ ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଏ, ଯେଉଁମାନେ ଧର୍ମ ଭିତ୍ତିରେ ରାଜନୈତିକ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକଳାପ ଜାରି ରଖିଥାନ୍ତି ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ଦକ୍ଷିଣପନ୍ଥୀ ରାଜନୈତିକ ସମର୍ଥକ ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଏ. The issue based on identities of religion, caste, ethnicity have overshadowed the social and political process after independence. The Hindu Mahasabha, the RSS means Rashtriya Swayak Sevak Sangha, continued to penetrate the masses through its social service projects and resuscitates the Hindu national spirit through a large network of tens and thousands of Sikhs. Hinduization and pedagogic inculcations. The socio-economic and cultural reforms which the RSS undertook after independence were extensively and got a wide-ranging recognition amongst the Indian masses. The RSS, in order to achieve its objectives, stroked at the roots of mass criteria. Other social reformist movements like Arya Samaj or of the Ramakrishna Mission, the RSS started agenda of penetration through wide-ranging educational institutions including pedagogic programs on traditional Hindu times. The RSS practice may be seen as a reaction to the widespread Christian missionary educational practices and also conversion. The RSS BJP has attempted to affect a radical departure in the existing educational ethos. Through the use of both state power by packing state educational institutions with its own ideologies and instruments of civil society. Rise of BHP and issue of conversion. Vishwa Hindu Parishad (VHP). The recent anti-Christian campaign, the BHP, which has been associated primarily with Rama Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid issue. Babri Masjid Ram Janmabhoomi issue is still burning today. The resurgent spirit of Hindu communal assertion finally found a historic expression in the Ajodhya movement, which Sri Girijalal Jain described as the most significant event after independence. The RSS holds the view that Ayodhya, Mathura, and Kashi is not a political but a national question. The issue further aggravated the situation. Islamic religious and communal movements like Hindus, Islamic organizations, Islamic leaders, Islamic fundamentalists. A faith in India and is pursued by Sangh Parivar is largely engaging in pan-Islamic ideologies in order to recover the past glory. Along with the Hindu religious social movements in India, the rising tide of Muslim politics was quite visible in the first quarter of 20th century, particularly after formation of All India Muslim League in 1926. Events like Khilafat movement, Mopla riot in Kerala, propaganda of two-nation theory, demand for Pakistan, and finally the partition of the country were the outcome of such politics fanned on religious lines. Religio-lingual issues, along with the demand for separate electorate, the Urdu language has also acquired religious color. Muslims, irrespective of their religion, region, and mother tongue, have constantly raised the issue of Urdu as a part of their religio-cultural heritage. The communal and terrorist activities and use of Islam, you know, the religious communalism of Muslims in India, especially in the state of Jammu Kashmir, is very acute. Christian religious and communal movements. Today, Christianity is generally perceived to be associated with the legacy of Western rule, which forced its religion upon Indians during the colonial period. However, the fact should be noted that Indian Christians are also old as Christianity itself. Sikh religion and communal movements we had already studied in the earlier units that Shiromani Akali Dal, Shiromani Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee, two principal organizations which mobilized Sikhs on the religious lines. This is all about communalism, religion-based community conflict and social movement, collective action of communal groups, and we have concluded units from 7, 6 to 12. 6 to 12. We have completed 7 units today. In the last class, in the next class, we shall complete 5 more units. Units 13 to 17. 5 units. Now we have completed 7 units. This time, doubt clearing session. Should the learners who have any doubt may go to the chat box, or you can open your audio and ask to explain these doubts as early as possible. As early as possible, we can clear your doubts you have any with you. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Sir. Sir.
Is there any doubt, students, or we'll close the session? Okay, sir. I think there is no doubt.
Sir.
Who are tribal? So one more Lokesh Bagh is So asking who are tribals?
Who are tribals?
Yes.
Tribals are the ethnic indigenous ethnic persons who particularly reside in the forest lands. There are 5 elements we had studied. There are
11 PM ପରେ 12 PM আছে না?
You can see this slide. The tribals follow multiple religions in the country. Buddhism, in Christianity, Islam, or their indigenous religions. They are present. They are present. They tribals particular definition. I can say you that tribals are the certain indigenous people who find their expression in all forms are like insurgency, protection of the culture and economy of the son of the soil from outside exploiters, secessions from the Union of India, autonomy movements, demand for the separate state and everything. Unlike the scheduled castes, there are different differences among the scholars on the criteria to identify the tribals or the scheduled tribes. While the scheduled castes consist of the erstwhile untouchable castes placed in the lowest rung of the Hindu society, the tribals follow multiple religions in the country. The tribals follow multiple religions in the country. They are present in Buddhism. They are also in Christianity, in Islam, or they are indigenous religions. However, there is almost a unanimity among the scholars on certain characteristics of tribals. এই যে ପାଞ୍ଚଟି characteristics ଲେଖା ଯାଇଛି ସେ ପାଞ୍ଚଟି characteristics କୁ fulfill କରୁଥିବା section କୁ tribal ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଏ। ତାହାର whose close association with nature, mainly with the forests, relatively traditional means of cultivation and less developed markets, near absence of the rigid division within the community and discrimination on the basis of birth, unlike the caste division among the Hindus, presence of the traditional chiefs and headmen, and better position of women as compared to non-tribals, attachment, reverence to tribal customs and culture. ଏଇଭଳି ପାଞ୍ଚଟି କ୍ରାଇଟେରିଆ କୁ ଫୁଲଫିଲ୍ କରୁଥିବା आदिम जनजाति को आदिम अधिवासी शेड्यूल बा अनुसूचित जनजाति बोली कहा जाए। अनुसूचित जनजाति बोली कहा जाए। सेमानंकर संख्या भारतीय जनसंख्यार 8%, 8% इन इंडिया। अनुसूचित जनजाति लोक माने मूल अधिवासी अटंती। भारतर से माने होचंती मूल अधिवासी। ସେମାନେ ଏକ ନିର୍ଦ୍ଦିଷ୍ଟ ମାନବ ଜାତିର ଅଟନ୍ତି। ଭିନ୍ନ ଭିନ୍ନ ଜନଜାତି ମାନଙ୍କର ଭିନ୍ନ ଭିନ୍ନ ଭାଷା ରହିଛି, ସଂସ୍କୃତି ରହିଛି, ଜୀବନଶୈଳୀ ରହିଛି, ସାମାଜିକ ବ୍ୟବସ୍ଥା ବି ରହିଛି, ପ୍ରଥା ପରମ୍ପରା ମୂଲ୍ୟବୋଧ ବି ରହିଛି, ଭିନ୍ନ ଭିନ୍ନ। ସେମାନେ ଅଣ ଜନଜାତି କୃଷକ ମାନଙ୍କ ଠାରୁ ଅଲଗା। ଏମାନଙ୍କର କୃଷି ସମ୍ବନ୍ଧୀୟ ସମସ୍ୟା ମଧ୍ୟ ଅଣ ଜନଜାତି କୃଷକ ମାନଙ୍କ ଠାରୁ ଅଲଗା। ସେମାନେ ଦୁଇ ପ୍ରକାରର ସୀମାବର୍ତ୍ତୀ ଜନଜାତି, ଫ୍ରଣ୍ଟିୟର, ନନ୍ ଫ୍ରଣ୍ଟିୟର। ସୀମାବର୍ତ୍ତୀ ରାଜ୍ୟ ଯେମିତି ଉତ୍ତର ପୂର୍ବାଞ୍ଚଳ ରାଜ୍ୟ ଯଥା ଆସାମ, ନାଗାଲାଣ୍ଡ, ମେଘାଳୟରେ ଯେଉଁ ଆଦିବାସୀ ମାନେ ଅଛନ୍ତି, ଅରୁଣାଚଳ ପ୍ରଦେଶରେ ଅଛନ୍ତି, ମଣିପୁର, ମିଜୋରାମ, ତ୍ରିପୁରା ଭଳି ରାଜ୍ୟରେ ଅଛନ୍ତି, ସେମାନେ ସବୁ ଫ୍ରଣ୍ଟିୟର ଟ୍ରାଇବାଲ୍ସ। and inside India, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh जो मान अछंती सेमाने नॉन फ्रंटियर ट्राइबल्स। तेणु ट्राइबल मानकर निर्दिष्ट कौनसी डेफिनेशन नाही। एई जो क्राइटेरिया गुडी को अछि से क्राइटेरिया को फुलफिल करूथले से मानको ट्राइबल बोली कहा जीवो। बुझेला? आर यू क्लियर? Tribals come under which religion? In every religion. The slide shows tribals are in Buddhism, are in Christianity, are in Islam, or they are indigenous religions. They are present, tribals are present almost in all religions.
Okay, sir.
Sir. Sir.
I think there is no more doubt.
Sir.
Learners, if you have any doubt, you can ask directly. Otherwise, let us wind up the session. Have you any doubt, learners? No. Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, learners. Thank you, sir.
Let us wind up the session. Okay, bye. Good night.
Good night, sir.